They said you were the best in the parsec.
Welcome to
Parsec Passion,
a podcast about Star Wars TV shows on Disney+. My name's Bubba. With me, as always, is someone hiding behind Chopper. It's Double M Matt Murdock. Matt, how you doing?
I am great, brother. I guess I could say that I am double R, double T.
Double R, double T.
Reprimand ready for my terrible takes.
Oh, no. Well, we're not going to have too many terrible takes because we're talking about Ahsoka Season 1, Part 5, Shadow Warrior. This is an episode where I got to see some takes, people's opinions of it, before I actually got to watch it myself. I know. I think a lot, if I almost had to do it, I'd say 95% of them were through the moon. But there were some real rough takes. In fact, a review on the website Collider was quite brutal. I don't know. I have a suspect. I don't know which side of this take you're going to be on. What is your rating for Part 5 Shadow Warrior?
Well, I am going to give this 9 out of 10, as usually expected.
Okay.
Double H's.
Wait, double H's?
Yeah, Hayden hairstyles.
Oh, yes.
I really like this episode. What concerns me, and maybe this wasn't the case for casual viewers who were familiar with Anakin, maybe that was enough. But what would concern me is that there was a lot of things about Ahsoka that I felt like you probably ought to know before this happened, that were kind of revealed as this episode happened. So that's what the point got taken off for, because I love the growth of the fact that Ahsoka is finally letting go of this thing that she is just a legacy of death and destruction, that she's ready to move on. And you even see it at the end of the episode, how much lighter she is, which made my heart flutter, because she's finally let go of all of this pain by what happened to her. But unless you understand the betrayals that happened in Clone Wars, unless you understand the Battle of Ryloth, which was the first thing that we saw, be it all just smoke, but unless you understand these kind of things, it probably didn't have near as much of a significance on you. And I know that they put this in the theaters. I think they planned this probably for quite a while, because look at that first shot. It was shot. Imagine seeing that on a big screen. That was great. Man. You've got Hayden Christensen back as Anakin. And I think that would be a big draw on its own. If you were a casual fan, you might be questioning why you paid $75 for that small popcorn in the theater, even though your ticket was free. Myself, if I could have driven 100 miles or so and seen it like that, I'd have paid $200 for that bathtub of Diet Coke that they put in there. But I thought it was a really good episode. How about you, Bubba?
Well, I want you to keep babbling. You keep talking about seeing this episode, Part 5, in a movie theater, like many fans got a chance to do. And I think, yes, I'd pay $200 for a popcorn if I got to sit next to Nicole Kidman, who is in every movie theater, as we all know. I'm going to have a bit, and I apologize for doing this, I'm going to have a bit of a preamble before I give out my rating. Uh-oh. I mentioned I've seen a million raves. I've seen a couple of just hard reviews of Part 5. I watched the episode late. I was tired. I'd been editing some other podcast. I had worked a full day at work. I was completely beat. And I sit down in my chair and I'm like, all right, Ahsoka, Part 5, let's go. And parts of this episode are very slow. Not much, in my opinion, forward momentum happens in the main overall story of, hey, we've got to prevent Thrawn from coming back and we want to find our buddy Ezra. Didn't seem like much forward momentum in that. There is a scene, I've been so tough on the dialogue this whole time. There's a scene with Hu Yang and Hera flying out over the ocean as they're, trying to find whatever remains of Ahsoka and Sabine, where I thought, this is terrible. I thought, Matt, you told me George Lucas said faster and more intense when directing. And there was a lot of scenes in this episode, maybe the whole episode, where I was like, faster and more intense, let's go. But you may guess from my preamble that is all just washed away when I get 9 double T's out of 10.
9 double T's?
Television triumph. I was annoyed by the slowness. I was frustrated by some of this dialogue. But there are moments in this which somebody who hasn't watched the animated show, and I haven't, but I know enough of it. I've taken in enough of the animated shows through osmosis where I kind of understand the Purgle. I understand, oh my goodness, Anakin wearing that hairstyle between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith is cool. Enough of it was like, oh yeah, wait a minute, you're going to jump in a whale and fly off into the unknown? It was beautiful, that shot of Purgle. It really was. And so you want to take what felt like 10 hours, kind of savoring it. Sure, let's go. 9 out of 10. I went with it. It was a television triumph. It turned me, the cool moments, the incredible moments, the incredible visual moments turned me. And Matt, you are so smart. When Ahsoka, at the end, she's inside the belly of the beast, inside the whale, and Hu Yang's like, is this going to work? And Ahsoka has this kind of given up smile on her face and like, maybe, I think so. That was the most I've ever liked Ahsoka ever. Like, that's the most I've ever liked this character. I thought, this stoic Ahsoka that I've mentioned so much in all these episodes, it's okay. She's certainly a great fighter, but that kind of wry smile on her face, like, I'm past all of it. Let's try it. I loved it. 9 out of 10. It's episodes like this that can convert me, and they might have done it. That's all I can say. 9 out of 10. Hopefully it makes some sense, because I've given up because I've said so many negative things about the slowness and the dialogue and all this stuff, even in this episode. But it was beautiful. Those moments were beautiful, Matt. What can I say? How can I go lower than 9 out of 10? I can't.
Right on. Bubba, we've both spouted on about what we think, but we know that most people don't care what we think, even if they're listening to the podcast. But we want to give them a chance to tell us what they think. How do they do that?
You can reach out to us right now. You want to talk Ahsoka. You want to talk about these beautiful, jaw-dropping moments that I'm feeling. Maybe you're one of the people who also felt the things like I did, like faster, more intense. Let's get going with this story. We want to hear from it. You can reach out to us on all social media at Double PHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P for podcast, HQ for headquarters. At Double PHQ, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. If you're one of the people watching this on YouTube, hey, give us a like, go down in the comments and tell us, hey, our review is right, our review is wrong. Who cares? We want to hear your review. Go down and give it to us right now. We are in the midst of a podcast bonanza, and we are hopefully flooding all your social media accounts talking about all these podcasts we're doing right now. We just wrapped up the after party. We're in the middle of Only Murders in the Building. We are now, I guess, past the middle of Ahsoka. And Matt, we are at the middle point somehow, after like 2 weeks, of the Wheel of Time. If you're interested in these type of shows at all, we want you to join us. And maybe you're like, the Wheel of Time, what is that? So Matt, our question of the week is, we are currently reviewing season 2 of the Wheel of Time, as well as doing this podcast on Ahsoka. What would you tell to somebody who watches Ahsoka why they may or may not want to watch Wheel of Time and listen to our podcast coverage?
Ooh, that's a good question, Bubba. And the first thing I got to point to is just the main character. You have a female lead that is powerful, wielding at magic. Although right now we have one that is not so powerful because she's been cut off in the Wheel of Time. Spoilers for Wheel of Time season 2. I think that there's a lot of similarities in character journey. At times for season 1, I would have said, yeah, the dialogue needs more pep in Wheel of Time, but it's gotten a lot better. Season 2 is much improved over season 1. And I think that if you are into fantasy at all, we saw a little bit of Game of Houses being played a couple of weeks ago, which is very similar to the political machinations of Game of Thrones, if you're into that kind of thing. Unlike the unpolitical, not sure what they're doing, New Republic of Ahsoka. It's interesting to see the different kinds of parallels that you can find. I think, though, if you just like a good story with characters that you will care about, because even in the weaker season 1 of Wheel of Time, I still managed to care about the characters. And so it's similar to this in that way. Otherwise, they're completely different. Don't.
Well, I think you can enjoy both. Go to your podcast app of choice, search for Bustin' Blockbusters. you're going to hear Matt and I and our good friend Priscilla breaking down the Wheel of Time. It's a whole lot of fun. Matt, before we break down Ahsoka Part 5, Episode 5, we do have a bit of news that is also a bit up your alley. Composer Kevin Kiner says the score for the first 4 episodes, so that doesn't include this Episode 5, but the first 4 episodes, the score for those is going to be coming out and available for people to download and purchase this Friday, 2 days from now, 1 day after you can download the podcast. Matt, anything they should be looking for in Kevin Kiner's score of those first 4 episodes that we haven't already talked about?
Well, the interesting thing is that I haven't really spent a lot of time of my musical analysis covering the newer kind of samurai kind of things. I've pretty much kept strictly to character themes and to Star Wars quotes kind of things. And I want to emphasize that there might be some decent original music on this that will stand on its own and be enjoyable. That is more in that samurai vein. So for listeners who are into that kind of stuff, I think you should look for that, and hopefully we'll get some. But you also got to play the hits. So I'm sure that there'll be nobody goes to a Billy Joel concert to hear him sing the 4th song on the last album that he just released. So you're probably going to hear an Ahsoka
version
theme
of the
in there.
Piano Man.
Yeah, exactly. They just light their lighters on and say, play Piano Man. And then he doesn't even have to work. He just plays it and they all sing it for him. It's great for his voice. He'll continue to be able to do that for a long time. And I don't blame him. I would sell out Madison Square Garden all the time, or wherever he plays in New York. I would definitely do that and not have to sing but maybe 3 notes of music all night long. That's great. Sorry, I got off on a tangent here. Kevin Kiner will be releasing this score, and he's doing it in 2 parts. This is something that I believe that has been started for like the last 4 or 5 years. Ever since streamers started releasing series, especially, in order to keep the engagement up, they will release some streamed shows have been releasing week to week. With each episode, you'll get different mini releases of 3 or 4. So I'd suspect that this has probably at least 8 to 10 tracks on it, and you'll get the other half after the season concludes. September 15th, which is the day before my birthday. So you know how I'll be celebrating my birthday. I'll be contributing to Kevin Kiner's ASCAP and BMI fund by actually purchasing the MP3s rather than just listening to them free. But you do what you want. That's fine.
Heck yeah. All right, we're going to get into this episode directed by Dave Filoni, written by the executive producer, the creator of Ahsoka, Dave Filoni. If you agree, if you disagree, we want to hear from you at Double PHQ on social media. Episode 4 left us on a big high. The villains and Sabine just shot away to another galaxy, left our heroes in tatters. And so you're like, okay, episode 5, what's going to happen? And it almost begins as a nature documentary. Look at these trees. Look at the water. Look at this cliff. Look at the destroyed star map that got destroyed in episode 4. And I literally wrote in the show notes, get on with it. Where is faster and more intense, man? What is going on? Let's go.
Like I said at the top of the show, I believe that they probably had this planned for a while, because I can't imagine seeing that on a big screen and not yelling out, get on with it. Or actually yelling out, get on with it. I can't see anybody doing that. Nobody would be Bubba, who just absolutely adores character development and hates action. So I thought that it was fantastic, but I understand, especially with the kind of big bombshell that the episode ended on, how you're ready to get right back into it. And I love that, because I feel like it actually raises the tension and makes the whole episode better.
The Ghost, which is the name of this spaceship, not the ghost that Ahsoka runs into in the World Between Worlds, but the Ghost is the name of a spaceship. It is landed there at the famous spot of the old ring of the Night Sisters, those witches. I guess it's their place that the Ghost is there. Hera, who brought her kid to Battle Day, and she's there. The kid comes out of the spaceship. He's like, Mom, can I finally come out? She's like, well, sure. But then anytime it's like, don't wander too far. And later she tells Jacen, hide behind Chopper. Now, I do feel terrible that the actor strike is preventing our listeners from being able to hear Catfish rip this kid a new one, because this kid is as precocious as all kids on TV shows are. I'll give him a bit of a tip of my cap. Hiding behind Chopper, that was kind of cute. Our heroes like Hera.
You understand how powerful Chopper is. That's actually a very smart move.
No, I'm saying I'd hide behind Chopper.
Yeah.
But I could, there's no way I could completely disappear behind Chopper like this little green-haired boy does.
Right.
Now, our heroes, and I guess the heroes we're seeing, Hera, she finds Hu Yang. What do? You came to defeat Morgan Elsbeth. You came to defend your friend Sabine and your friend Ahsoka, and nobody's there. And Hu Yang, he really should be working at the Jedi Temple, because a bit like Yoda, he's like, I told them not to split up, but did they listen to me? Hell no. Thanks a lot, Mom or Dad. I mean, geez, everybody's gone. What do you do if you're a hero in this case?
If you're Hera?
Yeah.
Well, you hit him on the side of the head and say, what the heck happened?
Yes, but if you're Hera and these X-Wing pilots, you went AWOL to go help your buddy on a mission, and there are no buddies to help. There's no mission to think of. Ooh, not good.
Well, I'm glad she didn't do what I would have done, which is actually just get back in the ship and, well, first I'd kick the ground a couple of times, kick some dirt up. And then I'd walk back into the ship and say, come on, Jacen. Come on, Chopper. And I'd just fly away.
Right. There's nothing to see here. Now,
you want to ride Hu Yang, or you got a ship?
Now, in this world between world, though, things are happening. Anakin and Ahsoka, once again, I didn't watch the animated show. I kind of sort of believe I know their relationship. I know Snips was something that the character Anakin called Ahsoka in the very first Clone War movies. And a lot of the fans at first were like, Snips, what's this ridiculousness? Did this relationship, the way they're acting at the beginning with Ahsoka telling Anakin, you look the same, and Anakin telling her, you look old. Was that interaction true to how they behaved in the Clone Wars series, Matt?
I believe it actually was, because Anakin's actually kind of snarky, and she's usually kind of snarky back, which that seems to be beaten out of Ahsoka a little bit after what happened to Anakin's turn. But it's good to see a little bit of that, I wouldn't say snarky, but a little bit of that lightheartedness come back at it for her at the end of the episode. The thing that really struck me, and I probably should have said this last year, but I think it seems even more appropriate with this year's. There's a lot of people of an age that is very similar to mine that were original Lucasfilm kids. Oh, yeah. And we did a lot of bashing of the prequels when they came out. Okay, I'll speak for me. I did a lot of bashing of the prequels when they came out. And I never, ever intended for it to be, like a personal attack on Ahmed Best or a personal attack on Hayden Christensen.
No, or that.
But I
Jake
really
Lloyd.
went to town on Jar Jar, and I really went to town on CW Anakin. I regret that. And I am so happy now that there is a new generation of kids who grew up with that prequel trilogy that love these characters, and that people of my fandom that stuck our feet in the ground and dared to say that it wasn't even Star Wars what George was doing there sometimes. I'm glad that we're dying off slowly. We're still going to be around for 20 years complaining, but
we're becoming one with the Force, Matt.
Yeah, we're becoming Force ghosts with no Force.
Right.
So that's a good thing. I think the love, especially for Ahmad this last year with The Mandalorian, and even last year with Obi-Wan, and especially with this, I think it's just wonderful for those guys, and they deserve it, because it was no fault of their own that things weren't quite to par with what we had made up in our heads. I think a lot of that was just fans being spoiled by Timothy Zahn's books and expecting some kind of epic revelations that really the original trilogy has one epic revelation, and that's that Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Spoiler alert.
And yeah, duh. And I just really wanted to say that seeing him like this, and I know you're going to get to the fight here in a second, but I just want to say that wrist spin move that Hayden does, that was in the Revenge of the Sith, when he was fighting with Obi-Wan, to see Hayden still be able to do that, and that wasn't a stunt double. I'm almost certain of it.
No.
I'm sure and if you watch any of that Making Enough stuff, I mean, him and Ewan trained like crazy for that last fight that they did in Revenge of the Sith, and they both had those moves already. And just everything that Hayden did throughout this whole episode, from these little forward thrusts with his shoulders to, just the stances, to the lightsaber twirls, to just the way he held it up, fell perfectly in line with the continuity of a character. Even the ways that things changed just slightly when you had the Darth Vader costume on. I mean, everything just worked so well. And I really just wanted to give hats off, even for just lines like this, where I just felt the Anakin that I should have loved better is back.
Oh, wow. Just to, make the smallest comment tied to yours. Those actors who got beat up in the prequels, it was never their fault.
Right.
George could have and should have found a way to take more of that blame, because they were doing exactly what he wanted. And he wanted things that, unlike the original trilogy, I guess what I would say were a more unique taste, some of his stuff. And so, never beat up the actors. Don't beat up the actors now in the new movies. They are, they are doing a role that they are encouraged to do. They could do 1,000,000 takes, and the director and editors are choosing take 5, and you never know. All right, but let's get to this. Anakin, he had his blue blade. I made a note of that. And he tells her he's here to finish her training, live or die. And it is tense, and you're like, okay, what is this going to be? You know what? Why not start right here at the beginning, Matt, before we cut away to Jacen staring blindly at the sea for like an eternity? It felt like, in your mind, in the world between worlds, we talked about this a bit last week. Is this really some version, some essence of Anakin that she knows? Or is this kind of pulled from her? I said it was a bit like Empire Strikes Back, the cave and the tree, where Yoda said, only what happens in there is what you bring with you. Do you think this is really a Force ghost Anakin, a Force projection Anakin, that like a bit of his essence is trapped in this world between worlds? Or is this what Ahsoka brought with her, like her own version of Anakin coming out and confronting her and challenging her? What do you think?
Do you want me to highlight a couple of the 3 million theories that are already out there about this?
Well, the ones you like. Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Well, there's several that, I am entertained by, and I don't know if I make anything of them, but some are saying it's just her near-death experience, that none of it really happens.
Certainly. Of course.
Some are saying, of course, that it is Force ghost Anakin on his way in between his own death and going back to appearing as a young person between Return of the Jedi, or at the end of Return of the Jedi in the George Lucas redone scene. Some are saying that it is actually something that occurred in the Clone Wars. It's an entity from an episode in the Clone Wars called The Father. The son, and the daughter, because there's a lot of significance about the daughter in the fact that it was the daughter's sacrifice that saved Ahsoka in that world when her and Anakin were there. And so naturally the father would be interested in Ahsoka's survival, and is just merely trying to help her along the way. Plus the changes of between the blue eyes and the red eyes, and, light and dark, because the father is the balance of the Force. Not brings the balance, but he represents the balance of the Force, whereas the son is the dark side and the daughter was the light side. There's all kinds of theories like this floating around. I prefer, and the one thing that I can discount is that this is not a physical Anakin, because even though we did see Ahsoka's eyes also change when she was holding his lightsaber at the end, and it looked like she might kill him, it just doesn't seem to me that would be a physical Anakin who had stumbled into it the same way that Ezra did during the Rebels. So that's one thing that I will completely throw out. And I think that's the one that I was hoping for last week when we talked about it. What do you think Anakin is here?
Again, maybe because it's what I came in with. It's a bit Yoda telling me. what do you see in this episode? Only what you brought with you. Because I assumed it was a representation of her projecting something out into the world, that these fears she had in her about, hey, I knew Anakin. He was my trainer, and I've heard these hideous stories. Hell, Baylan Skull just reminded me of a hideous story of what Anakin became. That's how I saw it. Listeners, if you're listening to this, what did you take it as? I think you definitely most likely took it as very compelling. And then suddenly the show cuts away from them about to fight to Jacen staring at the sea. And this is the part of the episode which somehow I went 9 out of 10 when it had these moments where they were just groaning moments. Nothing against this kid actor. He's doing what they want him to do. But if you're, 10 years old and they're like, okay, pretend you're hearing something through the force that may not be there. That's a tough acting gig for a 70-year-old person. Forget a 10-year-old. The only moment that kind of saved this whole little scene for me is that there was the line, I believe it was our good friend Carson Teva who said, Senator Organa says she can only give us cover for so long. And I'm like, Senator Organa? Don't you mean General Organa? Ah, man, awesome. Hell yeah, let's go.
I love that too, because how many years is this occurring after the Battle of Endor?
Again,
5?
we are assuming 5. Let's keep that as our guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 13-year-old me saw Leia in the metal bikini, which means I would be 18 by the time this episode happens, and she's not Senator Solo. So you're saying I got a chance.
Right. She hasn't married yet. Hell yeah, let's go. She hasn't given birth to the evil Ben Solo yet. We love it. I'm dissing this part of the scene, this very slow moving, hey, can you hear it? I can hear lightsaber clashing bit so much. But it does have one of my favorite moments in the episode. Hera's like, wait, I can hear it. Jacen, you can hear it. Hey, Carson, get the X-Wing pilots. Fly across the ocean back and forth. Scan for stuff. Fly back and forth. And I personally thought, this actor playing Carson Teva, his dismissal of the delivery, okay, I thought it should win an Emmy because it was exactly how I felt watching. I was like, sure, okay, great. We came all this way and that's what you want me to do. Thanks for nothing. Hands down, the greatest delivery of a dismissal okay that I've ever heard.
Right on.
100%, 100%. Back in the dreamscape. Okay, let's get away from this boring cliff. Let's go back to the dreamscape.
Oh, but doesn't Jacen hear the lightsabers in the...
Yes, it only takes him 10 minutes to hear them. I mean, oh my Lord. Faster,
come on,
intense.
But that's exciting because that's where you hear one of the Star Wars themes that you've always known.
Okay, yeah, that is true. Do you think Jacen heard that awesome theme, or is he just hearing the lightsabers?
He's hearing the music. He ain't hearing the lightsabers.
Okay, I like that. Okay. No, let's get back to the fun zone. Let's get to the fireworks factory, man. In this dreamscape, Anakin has cut out the bridge. She falls through an eternity. She falls down in the Clone Wars. She is in a battle surrounded by clone troopers. And even better, she's back at that age. So once again, we're going to assume this is maybe 28 years before the Ahsoka that's the star of the show. We see her as a young Padawan. Anakin with that animated hair between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. This was great. This is a live action version of those animated shows you saw, Matt. What did you think? I thought it was great.
I thought it was fantastic. I think that there probably would be some complaints about, well, this is supposed to be Ryloth, so why aren't we seeing what happened on Ryloth? I mean, it's almost directly taken from the animated stuff.
Wow.
But I will say this. If you're not going to cast Ashley, was it Eckstein? Is that her,
right,
the actress's name
who
did the voice? If you're not going to cast her, then I think Ariana Greenblatt is an excellent choice. She's practically made a living playing younger versions of epic characters. She was the one who played young Gamora in Infinity War, in Avengers Infinity War. So she's well versed at this. But here's the thing. She did her homework. Mm-hmm. I mean, every move that Ahsoka made in this live action thing, you could go back to Clone Wars and find it somewhere. It was all, and credit that to the choreography, credit that. Even I commented on this on our very first podcast for these first 2 episodes about how they made care to, even when Ahsoka is running, the way that she swings her arms. Mm-hmm. Same thing here. and the way the slides and saber stabs later during the Battle of Mandalore. This girl did her homework, and she totally played the part. I loved this portrayal almost more than I love adult Ahsoka.
Ouch.
Sorry
Oh,
to
man.
say. Yeah, I just because I just felt it felt truer to the animated series.
Okay, and so I see this note here that you wrote in our show notes where you said the whole purpose of this episode 5 was to restore Ahsoka back to who she could be.
Yeah.
So Baylan Skoll had, like he had dissed her about her master Anakin, he had kind of said, listen, you're about nothing but death and destruction. And here she's saying she's been involved in death and destruction since she was a young kid, man. I mean, she was in a battle. This is hardcore.
Yeah, and Anakin does his best throughout this episode, pretty much the same way that he did in Clone Wars, which was mostly for comic relief, but he does try to lighten her mood a little bit. You know, come on, war is fun. Killing droids is fun. Destruction is fun, more or less. And I think that one of the things that is really lovely about this is the lesson that comes through and the way that you see it and how it explains why she couldn't go back to Anakin, how it explained, you know, once she had been kicked out of the orders and was offered to return, she'd already made that decision about what Anakin was. Once she got away from all of that and did her work for the rebellion, why when she got to Sabine, she didn't want that to be her legacy. So she just left Sabine. All of these fears that we'd been talking about, it's pointing to, become realized in this episode. And I absolutely love it. And to see someone who is not our main actress be able to portray that, I thought was extraordinary.
Now, I put a note in these show notes. I'm seeing this, I'm watching this battle. Then we're seeing the aftermath of the battle when many of these clones have died. And I put in the show notes, maybe this should have been the opening scenes of the series. If I haven't watched the animated shows and I want to get a 411 on this character Ahsoka and then her relationship to Anakin, which is a big part of her life, I wonder if this should have been how the series opened as opposed to kind of buried here in the middle to let newbies to this content like me suddenly go, okay, this is how she ended up where she was. What do you think about that? Or do you like it here placed in the middle?
I actually like it in the middle because I like the surprise factor that this probably offered. Because I think that your casual fan is trying to understand what Ahsoka's motivations are or why she's doing this or why she's doing that. I don't want to see Brand get thrown out of a window at the very beginning of the first episode.
What do you mean? You saw that at the end of the very first episode.
Yeah, but it was still at the end of the first episode after you'd seen some motivation behind him getting thrown out the window. Okay. I think this is kind of the same thing. I think that you probably
this is much later than the first episode. This is episode 5, man.
You need the character to have stakes that people are questioning. And then once you reveal what those stakes are, it makes it even more compelling. I think Filoni is playing the long game here, and he's got the facility to do that. So why not make it as epic as it possibly can? You can't have Hayden Christensen running around in the first episode. What you going to do on the 5th episode?
Well, if it's
how are you going to get people to the theaters in the first episode?
If it's me for the 5th episode, you're going to have a Chopper exclusive only episode. Chopper's, so him in a one-man show.
A life in war crime. Right.
Please, this is awesome, awesome stuff. Even if it is surrounded by dream clouds, it was incredible to see. Little quick flashes of Anakin becoming Vader, becoming himself. How fun, how incredible. Why are we cutting away from that to Hera and He-Young flying in the cockpit, talking about, we haven't found them. Is there a way, He-Young, that you think Ahsoka could survive? He-Young, let me think. Silence. There's always a chance. I mean, oh my goodness, this almost broke me. But of course, what saves me is we get back to the action. Did you have any moment you enjoyed of the Hera and He-Young in the cockpit scene, Matt?
The short answer is no.
Thank you. Okay, good. Let's get back there. And it's, oh snap, suddenly we're at a different battle. Ahsoka is a badass. This is wonderful. She is cutting down Mandalorians, in the Siege of Mandalore. And it is awesome to see. And even the fallout from that. You're always maybe people want to joke, oh, Bubba only likes action. No, even the fallout from that, where she's, been a badass, she's done all this stuff. And then you can see the pain within her where she's saying, but part of that legacy of mine is death and war. I mean, whoa, this is wonderful. We don't need to leave this again. And then hold the phone. Anakin's lightsaber is red and he is coming saying, I gave you a choice. You hear very brief moments of Vader breathing. Oh my God. It's flashing once again between Anakin and himself. Incredible, man. Incredible moments. Oh, hell to the yeah. I am one with the Force when I see stuff like this. Let's go.
I think that one of the things that I really liked, that I hope that even other animated fans liked, was the difference of those things. It's almost like, when she's falling, I love that move because that's a typical Vader move. Just cut the bridge off and you fall.
Yeah.
But I love that move of the fog being kind of representative of those direct gates that we saw in the Rebels series. I thought that was a much more mystical and wonderful way to present it, rather than, oh, look, there's Ahsoka and Vader fighting, and here's this big window, and I'm just going to reach my hand in and pull her out. That doesn't work for me, but this really did. And it still leaves the mystery, and which is exactly what Filoni wants you to do. Was it all just in her mind? Did it really happen? She's been to the world, the world between worlds before. So is this just her brain shutting down?
Right.
And her subconscious being Anakin saying you can live, forgive yourself for all of the stuff that Anakin did and move on. You can go with any kind of explanation or question that you want about it. But I just thought that all of the way they did the transitions, especially when they're on Mandalore and he turns on her again and kicks her and she comes out the fog on the other side and he comes through. I love that when they're battling. Good. I think it's so good. Yes.
Wonderful. And let's just get to it. You're right. At the end of this, Ahsoka says that she's choosing to live. And you have that little infamous Hayden Christian smile, which, that like one side of his lips curl up. It's almost like a smirk. And he says, there's hope for you yet. I love it. I love it.
I did too. And folks, he really does use the Force to make that lip do that. That's what happens.
And then Ahsoka returns to the realm of the living, is how I describe it. And there were some special effects that I didn't think were great in this episode. There was a shot of the X-Wings flying over the ocean, just kind of constantly flying over the ocean. I thought those were kind of weak. But when you have effects of an X-Wing pilot diving into this sea and pulling her out, I thought it's beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful.
Plus, I mean, how much of the budget for the whole season did they spend on the de-aging for Hayden? Which, by the way, was immaculate. It was amazing.
I thought so too. I thought at times it was great.
It was much better than last week's, I thought. And
do you think that was because he was in that smoky environment half the time, that they put a little smoke in front of him? But I'm with you.
It could very well be that they had to use less, or that the intensity of whatever the deep fake was had better effect in those kind of situations. But I thought it looked fantastic, and I can forgive an X-Wing looking like a snowspeeder flying across Hoth level of effects.
Lower than that,
yeah. And to get that kind of look, I honestly, whenever I see Hayden Christensen, I don't think he looks that much older. So I don't know how much they had to use, but it was pretty clear they were using something last week. Not so clear that they were using something this week.
I'll just piggyback and say a couple of those shots were incredible. Ahsoka, I believe the next thing we really should talk about is she's waking up in her bunk there on the Ghost. She seems okay, and okay at peace with herself as well, until Hu Yang tells her they haven't found Sabine. And that's when it's like, oh no, are we back to moody emotionally cut off Ahsoka. There is a scene of Jacen trying to say, hey, teach me, teach me. Hera's like, Hu Yang, take this kid away, show him the inside of a Jedi ship. And Hu Yang finally proves he is the audience surrogate because he takes a look at Jacen and says, I don't want to train you, kid.
Will you train me? No. Can I see the ship? Yes.
I know.
Will you train me? No.
No. I mean, just please keep saying no, Hu Yang. I don't care if his dad was a Jedi. Please, no. Not until he's older. I'll be the anti-Yoda. Too young you are. So annoying currently. Now, Sabine did not appear in this episode at all, but she had a bit of bad news because she left a bit of memory on the map, and Ahsoka can use the Force to see that her friend, her good friend, her own Padawan, Sabine, pulled an Anakin. Sabine gave up the map. Sabine couldn't make the choice that she told her she needed to make at the beginning of episode 4. Any thoughts about that, Matt, about how Ahsoka must feel knowing that Sabine made this choice for Ezra over the New Republic?
Yeah, I think we even briefly addressed this last week. And I think that the funny thing is because Ahsoka said, we may have to do this. And as Sabine had told her, of course we do. But Ahsoka at that time is still there. She's still in this world. And as far as Sabine knows, Ahsoka is no longer in this world. And I talked about the fact that she has no family left except Ezra, and that's her last hope. Is it worth betraying the entire galaxy? Probably not. But, Anakin was willing to do it for Padme.
Oh, yeah, that's not exactly the lesson we're supposed to learn. But yes, that's exactly right. That is exactly right.
Well, I thought you were calling Sabine a Sith. That's why I went that route. But evidently not.
She did something really wrong. That's all I'm going to say about Sabine, who I think, up there with the villains is my favorite character in this show. People who are not my favorite characters, even though I love so many of these characters, including Mon Mothma. The New Republic fleet is coming to arrest the AWOL general and her traitor X-Wing pilots. Are they right to do it? I kind of think they are. I mean, the show always puts us in the hero's mindset. Hera was trying to save her friend. Hera does want to stop Thrawn from coming. So Hera has the right motivation, but she did go AWOL. What do you think of this move by the New Republic?
It's much easier to impose order on your own, as an example, than it is to take it out on a public that just got out of years of oppression. So I think it politically and probably procedurally makes sense. Is it, as we know it as viewers, in the overall scheme of things, is it the right move? Absolutely not. But I think in the small minds of this group, you have to think, or the small purview that this group has, until Hera and Carson kind of try and convince them. It's pretty tough to not say, well, this is good enough, or pretty hard to say, this is wrong. We can't let our own examples of leadership go through these things.
Yeah, we can't have all the generals flying off on their own personal missions.
Right.
Mon Mothma, who I love, she's trying. She's like, do you have Morgan Elsbeth? And nope. And then they're like, you're going to be permanently suspended. And Mon Mothma does what she could, but she says in all but the words, you're screwed. She ends her transmission with, I'm sorry. She doesn't even say, I'm sorry. Goodbye. I'll see you when you get back. It's just, I'm sorry. And then switches off the transmitter. And I thought to myself, Mon Mothma, that's a boss move. I'm going to end today's podcast just by saying, I'm sorry. And then click. Hell yeah. What do you think about the X-Wing pilots? It's better than
help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. I will say that.
Fair enough. But these X-Wing pilots, they got dragged to this thing by a general. Do you think they knew they were being taken to a mutiny? Hey, guys, come with me to this personal mission.
I think that they probably learned after they got there. But at the same time, I can't see Carson or any of these guys even knowing beforehand not making the same choice. Because that she's they call him Phoenix Squadron, which was basically she was a Phoenix cell leader in Rebels, which means they've known her for a long time. They trust her and they know this is the right thing to do.
All right. Speaking of the right thing to do, the Morgan Elsbeth's ship is gone. Sabine has gone. The villains are gone. You've lost. I guess we do need to follow them. Why not just say, okay, they won this round? Instead, it's let's go crazy. I'm going to go up to a giant Purrgil, the biggest one we can find, talk to it through the Force and say, hey, do you mind us traveling in your mouth to another galaxy? Literally, Matt, I'm not going to be little Jacen. I'm going to say the full quote. I have a bad feeling about this. Forget this. I, as a kid, always thought, ooh, won't it be fun to go to space? I am not going in the mouth of a space whale, Matt. Hell no. You are kidding me.
I loved the communication.
I did too.
It was exactly mirroring what Ezra did.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
In Rebels, when Ezra communicated with the Purrgil for the first time, and I was just like, "Gosh, Ahsoka, that's lucky." And then I just realized that it's Dave Filoni, so of course they've got the same moves, and of course the Force has guided them the same way to communicate with these animals.
Let me say, Hera, who I always tease has got the lamest lines in the show. I do have to say, I LOL'd when she radios to the New Republic, and she said as calmly as possible, I'd move your ships out of the way if I were you. I did LOL at that.
Yeah.
And I talk about beauty and jaw dropping. We stayed on it forever. This was a long animation of these Purrgil flying in the clouds and then flying out to space. But it is beautiful. I'll give it that. It is absolutely, positively beautiful. And they gone. She and Hu Yang, did Hu Yang get a vote in this? Wait a minute. I'm going to be inside a beast's mouth as it flies to another galaxy.
And she doesn't even know where it's going.
Right. Again, that smile, these smiles, and this new attitude from Ahsoka, please let it be for the rest of this first season. I loved it. Or she could kick ass. These are the two modes of Ahsoka I love. I thought it was great. We've talked about the episode 5. We want to hear from you at PHQ. It's time for our game, Matt. You know what game that is.
Jedi or not Jedi?
Jedi or not a Jedi. That's where we talk about characters, ideas, themes in the show, and we say, hey, is that a Jedi or is that not a Jedi? And so let's have the first one. This is a character I don't think we've put in this before, but it's Carson Teva. We've seen him on The Mandalorian. I think there's a chance we even saw him on the Book of Boba Fett. He's the Outer Rim X-Wing patrolman, Carson Teva. What says you, Jedi or no Jedi?
No Jedi would ever be caught dead wearing orange, so therefore Carson Teva is not a Jedi.
I've already given Carson Teva this note, but his absolute dismissal delivery of, okay, oh my God, gold. That, you've got to have a high middle chlorian count to deliver that line that perfectly. Carson Teva, officially, I'm knighting him a Jedi in my book for that.
Well, now, Bubba, we have actually done Mon Mothma before, but maybe, given the circumstances of this episode, we should reevaluate. Yes. What would you say now about Mon Mothma? Jedi or not Jedi?
Let me say, I've already kind of given up the ghost on all of these. When you are talking to a buddy, but they are SOL, and you just end the transmission with, I'm sorry. Jedi move. That is awesome, Jedi. When you do a mic drop and you don't have a mic, you are officially a Jedi. Mon Mothma, claim your Kyber crystal. You're great. How about you? What says you, Mon Mothma, in this episode? Jedi or not a Jedi?
See, I'm conflicted here because I know that Leia eventually became kind of a Jedi, although the training is, she became somewhat of a quasi-Jedi, enough to train Rey.
Right.
So you could call her a Jedi, but the thing that I keep coming back to is whenever Leia leaves holographic messages, she is not a Jedi, and therefore Mon Mothma leaving holographic messages especially ones that end on a note that distresses the listener a great deal, like "I'm sorry" or "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." I think there's too much of a similarity of not Jedi within those messages.
Matt, I've never said this before, but your argument convinced me. Okay, I'm with you. She's not a Jedi. All right, hey, Matt, the New Republic in this episode, they admittedly did not approve Hera or these X-Wing pilots to fly off on this mission, but then they send, it seems like 3 giant battleships to find Hera and bring her back. Just, one person who's there with her kid. Then they pretty much have to move their ships as quickly as possible not to get blasted by Space Whale. New Republic so far in Ahsoka. Jedi?
New Republic
not
is definitely Jedi. Definitely Jedi, Bubba.
Whoa.
And here's why.
Let's hear
because just like the Jedi Order, they keep their people from having any fun, and then they overreact to the slightest thing.
Matt, how did you become so good at these arguments? You've convinced me. That is actually the most brilliant argument I've ever seen. New Republic, get your robes, you are a Jedi. Okay, now this is an action. It doesn't necessarily have to be the action Ahsoka did, but an action. If you are a person and you put yourself in the mouth of a giant space whale, which can hyperspace jump to another galaxy, and you do it while smiling, is that a Jedi move or is that a non-Jedi move?
It's funny because that seems to be exactly what Ahsoka did.
Yes, no.
Let's see. That's a tough one. You have to have let go of your fear to be able to do that. So that's a check in the Jedi corner.
Right.
Doesn't seem like the smartest plan in the world.
No.
So that also seems like it's in the Jedi corner.
No.
You smile while doing it.
Yep.
That also seems like it's in the Jedi corner. So I'm going to say yes, Jedi, definitely a Jedi move.
No, I'm going to go back to the prequel Jedi. Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequels, he never smiled. So therefore, not a Jedi. He was grumpy Grumperson. Let's be honest, Ahsoka, until this episode, never smiled. I'm giving it, you smile, you are not a Jedi. Listeners, what do you think? Are these things Jedi, not Jedi? Are they gray Jedi or dark Jedi or Sith? Reach out to us at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram and Threads and let us know. Matt, I think if you're going to do your musical analysis right now, you're going to have to be a Jedi.
Well, if that's the case, then I'm going to have to force this segment on you.
Ooh, I don't get it.
Use the Force, Kevin. Let go, Kevin.
This is what Kevin did with the Force theme this time around. Well, not really. He just tweaked a couple of little things, but I loved it when Jacen was sensing Ahsoka's presence, or at least the presence of the entry to the world between worlds, or however you want to say it. He was using the Force. And so we got that theme when he pointed it out to Hera that there was something going on with the waves. It sounded like this. Definitely very recognizably the Force theme, and if you're not really paying attention closely, it pretty much sounds the same. But like I said, there were a couple of little tweaks that I loved. One was adding a counterpoint line. That was that line that was floating around up top. The other was some very slight differences in harmonization. Plugging the minor 5 chord in, which is normally a major or dominant 7 chord in most harmonies. And actually in the original version of this theme, there's no chord there, it just carries over from the 1 chord. But the one that really tripped me up and made me giggle just a little bit was the second time that same phrase came around, and there was a little bit of reharmonization. Again, normally it sounds like this. But in the second phrase, kind of did a reharmonization by turning that minor chord into its relative major, like this. It's a slightly different sound. Really, you're only changing one note. You're changing what would be the root of that original chord, and you're just lowering it down a step, but that's what makes it the relative major. Let me explain relative major and minor real quickly. A relative major chord and a relative minor chord both use the same set of scale notes. It's just where you feel home is. But because one is relatively major, more hopeful, and the other one is relatively minor, usually darker, the feeling changes just a little bit. That's the power of harmony. And another great example of changing the harmony just slightly to add just a tweak of hope to things is when Jacen actually sees the ghost returning and they have Ahsoka. And I don't know if it's that he's sensing Ahsoka is there or not, but as the ship approaches, we get Ahsoka's theme. However, it's harmonized different than the way we're used to hearing it. Normally, we're used to hearing it done in a minor phrasing. Or Ludwig even did a kind of climbing thing that felt like it was getting into a major key, the relative major key, back in The Mandalorian Season 2. But here, even though he adds a little bit of rising in it, everything is centered on the 4 chord. I've talked about this before, but when you have a 4 chord in either a major or a minor key, the tone that creates can affect the feeling. Because this one is using the regular 4 chord against a regular major, using what we call the Lydian mode, which is really just that same major scale going from the 4th step up to the 4th step, and using those notes as the harmonies. This makes a major chord seem a little bit bigger, and that's what happens with this particular phrasing of Ahsoka's theme. I'll play that for you, and we'll be back with Bubba in just a second. Bubba, I bet you still don't get it.
You're absolutely right. I'll never get it. But one thing we do get, not enough of, we want more listeners, is your feedback. Double M Matt Murdock, you have somehow an online frenemy in our good buddy at Patman23 on Twitter. And he gave us a lot of messages about him catching up with Ahsoka in our podcast. You want to read this and maybe respond to our buddy Patman?
Oh, of course. This is the way Bubba punishes me. It makes me read the berating that my nemesis gives me. Patman23 on X says, I appreciated the shout out from Musical Concepts on the latest Parsec Passion in regards to Mandalorian helmets. Right. Just like with Bo-Katan, I respect Sabine wanting to take her helmet off, even if I also respect, unlike Catfish, Mando's desire for helmet on. Thank you for chiming in on that, Patman. Patman continues by saying, I've been getting caught up on watching the show episodes and have nearly been caught up on the podcast episodes. I really appreciated Nephew Paul's somewhat imperial biased info dump.
Hold on. I appreciate you saying Nephew Paul's info dump was somewhat imperial biased. Way to give that qualifier, which didn't need to come in, Patman. Thank you.
Patman, I wonder if you're actually listening, because then the next thing you say is, Matt needs to chill on calling literally everything a war crime.
Please, yes, amen.
I noted your concern that Ahsoka has more of a samurai story feel. You said, Matt, Shogun, but I know what you mean. While The Mandalorian has more of an American Wild West feel, and you commented on how to resolve those being in the same universe. I need to remind you that Kurosawa's The Seventh Samurai and Yojimbo were successfully Westerns, or successfully translated into The Magnificent Seven and one of those Clint Eastwood spaghetti Westerns, A Fistful of Dollars. Maybe? So, the harmony between samurai stories and Western stories is strong.
Man,
But
Pat Man took you to Jedi school there. He was Hu Yang to your points, Matt. I love it. Do you have a response?
Yeah, I do. You say I need to chill. Pat Man, you need to chill on making 90% of your feedback about me. Why don't you talk about the
100%,
show instead of me?
Man. Oh, no.
I respect all of that, Pat Man. You are right. You win again. Curses me. But just like an Anakin appearance, I'll be back.
Oh, man. I hope you wear that awesome wig, too. Thank you, Pat Man. Hey, our good buddy Nathan reached out on our Facebook page, and Nathan, who had come up with a great Maroc theory that turned out to not be true, he said, with so few Force users left at this point in the Star Wars timeline, Maroc being a faceless henchman is definitely disappointing. Yeah, I like the fan theory of it being a resurrected zombie Maroc, but I have a feeling that the show will never mention Maroc again. Do you want to make a bet on that, Matt? Do you think the show will ever mention Maroc again? I don't. I'm with Nathan on this.
I think that it's probably supposed to be assumed that you've watched Clone Wars and you saw how the Night Sisters resurrected people, and that's. I think that's what the approach that Filoni's taken, but at the same time. There's a whole wide audience out there that will never watch those episodes. So maybe you ought to say something about it.
No.
Even if you don't.
Now, Nathan continues, I'm hoping that we at least get some backstory on Baylan Skoll. Me too. 100%. I agree with this next sentence from Nathan, who writes, the passing of Ray Stevenson is definitely a huge loss for the Star Wars live action universe. Baylan Skoll is definitely the most interesting new character that has been introduced in some time. Now, I think we forget Andor, who had a lot of great new characters in it, but I do, Nathan, while adding that little Andor caveat, I think you're 100% right. And Ray Stevenson, what a loss. What a loss. And, I really don't even know what to say. Let's turn away from that sad moment. On our Twitter, @PHQ, we ask people, hey, what are you expecting to see in episode 5? So this is before the episode was released. Our good friend Laura @Mazocat on Twitter said, more Anakin and maybe Carson Teva. Laura.
Wish granted.
Yeah, I know. She knew what she was saying. She was like, she had entered the world between worlds and knew what was coming. Our good friend, a true Twitter icon @EndlessMike03. We're like, what do you want to see in episode 5? He said, Grief Karga with an ice cold sick burn. Oh, man.
Yeah. Better than I'm sorry, for sure.
Grief's beef would be so good. If Grief saw the mess that Sabine and these characters had made of the galaxy, you better believe he wouldn't be saying Dank Ferrick. He'd be saying something much worse. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Harley Camille on Twitter, that's our friend Camille, wanted to see Thrawn, which Bubba, you and I both suspected might happen as well.
Yeah, the movie theater.
And we were all disappointed, and Camille came back and later said, well, no Thrawn, but I still loved the episode. The flashbacks were amazing. Space whales rule. Heart emoji Star Wars. Love Star Wars.
Yes. Now, hold on. Let me say, I guess I've said this with almost everybody's feedback. Harley Camille, 100%. Yes. Space whales do rule. No Thrawn, but like you, I still love the episode, even with my caveats about these tough scenes. We did get this feedback too when you asked people on your Twitter @MusicalConcepts, hey, what did you think of Ahsoka Part 5? And our good buddy Hamlet is Dead just responded with some emojis that were pretty much like, hell to the yeah. I love it. We want to hear from you guys @PHQ next week. We only have, Matt, this is hard to believe, only 3 episodes left. Whoa. There's no way. Let me say, if we're at this point and there are only 3 episodes left, this is ending on a huge cliffhanger. There's no way this story can get resolved. I guess it could be resolved about, hey, we want to prevent Thrawn from coming back. Thrawn came back. Otherwise, you know what I mean? They're not going to wrap this up cleanly. That's for sure.
I agree. I'm worried that it's going to be that kind of cliffhanger ending that's going to be a downer, not unlike Empire.
Yeah, it really, really could be. And then because of the writer's strike, They definitely haven't started filming season 2. This could be a cliffhanger that we might not get a resolution on for 2+ years. Whoa. Listeners, what do you think? What do you want to see in these final 3 episodes of Ahsoka? Do you want to see Thrawn? Hey, we need to see Thrawn. Everybody's been trying to find him. Hopefully we can find him soon. For everybody here at Double P Media and Double P HQ, my name's Bubba. You can find me on the app that I only refer to as Twitter, at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM, at Fit and Trim on Twitter.
And you can find me on X because I fear Elon Musk's hand grasping my handle and taking it away. You can find me on X at Musical Concepts.
And you'll hear us next time on
Parsec Passion.
You know, we may need to switch the name of the show to Purgo Passion.
It's a new version of Free Willy.
Hell yeah.